Have you ever walked into a room and 3 seconds later found yourself standing there with a completely blank mind, wondering why you even came? Or maybe you just left the house, halfway there, and suddenly a disturbing thought hits you. Did I even close the door? Did I turn off the stove? What about the iron? And you're standing outside and you can't remember. At all. It's as if the moment never happened. Or maybe you replied to a message, and a minute later you can't remember whether you sent it. Or you were reading a book, turned the page, and realized you couldn't remember a single word from the previous one. Or you were talking to someone, nodding, smiling, and then realized you couldn't remember what the conversation was about. If all of this sounds like you, don't panic. It's not dementia, it's not old age, and it certainly doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's a unique psychological phenomenon that affects millions of people around the world. And today, we'll figure out why this happens, what exactly is going on in your brain at these moments, and what it really says about your personality. Because behind this forgetfulness lies something much more interesting than just a bad memory. The first and most important reason is simply called autopilot. To understand what it is, imagine the following. The first time you tied your shoelaces, it was incredibly difficult. You stared at each lace, thought about every move, asked your mom to show you again. It required your full conscious attention. But now you tie your shoelaces in a matter of seconds without even thinking about it. You can talk on the phone, think about work, look out the window, and your shoelaces will still be tied perfectly. That's what autopilot is. The brain is an incredibly intelligent machine. It doesn't want to waste energy on something it's already mastered. So everything you do regularly, closing the door, turning off the light, putting your phone on charge, all of it goes into automatic mode. You do it without conscious thought. Your body is doing the work, but your mind is already somewhere else entirely. And that's where the problem arises. Conscious memory only records what it focuses its attention on. If there's no attention, there's no memory. Did you close the door? Yes, you did. Your body did. But at that moment, your brain was thinking about tomorrow's meeting, yesterday's conversation, what to buy for dinner. And so the memory simply didn't get recorded. Like a video that was filmed, but the file wasn't saved. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. The brain saves a huge amount of resources this way. But sometimes this system fails, and things we really need to remember end up in the autopilot archive. The second reason is stress and information overload, and this is perhaps the most common cause in the modern world. Think about it. How much information do you process every day? Notifications, news, work tasks, messages, plans, worries, memories, conversations. The modern brain receives as much information in one day as a medieval person received in a lifetime. And yet, the capacity of our working, or short-term, memory hasn't changed. It can still only hold about 7 pieces of information at a time. What happens when short-term memory is overloaded? It begins to push out old information to make room for new information. And often, the victims of this process are precisely recent actions, things you did 5 minutes ago. You were thinking about 10 things at once while turning off the faucet, and the memory of turning off the faucet simply dropped from your memory before it had a chance to take hold. But stress does something even more insidious. Chronic stress increases levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, in the blood. And cortisol, as scientists have proven, literally suppresses the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for forming new memories. This means that the more anxious you are, the less your brain records what's happening right now. Stress doesn't just distract you. It chemically interferes with your ability to remember. This is why people who experience intense stress, moving, breaking up, or facing problems at work, have difficulty recalling the details of that period. The brain was in survival mode. It wasn't busy archiving memories. The third reason, and it will surprise many, is emotional detachment from the present moment. Here's the thing. Memory and emotion are much more closely linked than we think. You've probably noticed that vivid emotional events are remembered for a lifetime. Your first kiss, the moment you learned something shocking, the day something incredibly joyful or painful happened. These memories are clear, detailed, vivid. But what about an ordinary Tuesday 3 weeks ago? Chances are you remember almost nothing, because there were no strong emotions there. The brain uses the emotional charge of an event as a signal of importance. It was powerful. Therefore, I must remember it. If there is no signal, the event is not prioritized. Now imagine someone who lives in a state of chronic emotional detachment. This could be the result of fatigue, depression, burnout, or simply a habit of not being here. Such a person does everything right. Gets up, eats breakfast, goes to work, comes home, but inside, they feel almost nothing. Everything is gray, muted, automatic. And that's precisely why he doesn't remember anything. Not because his memory is bad, but because there was no emotional marker that would tell his brain, remember this. The action passed, like a shadow. It was and it wasn't. If you're familiar with this state, it's an important signal. Not about memory. It's about the need for more living presence in your life. Okay, now, for the most important part, what does all this say about you as a person? And here's where things get interesting, because the answer isn't what you might expect. Research in cognitive psychology shows that people prone to this kind of everyday forgetfulness often possess a number of distinctly positive traits. First, they tend to be very active thinkers. Their brains are constantly busy, processing ideas, constructing scenarios, analyzing, creating. Such people are often so immersed in their own thoughts that the outside world literally passes them by. The absent-minded professor isn't a myth. It's a real psychological type. Second, these people are often more creative and intuitive. Their brains operate in a broad, diffused mode of attention. They grasp many things at once, seeing connections where others miss them. This is the source of creativity. But it's also the reason why small details tend to slip by. Third, such people are often deeply sensitive and empathic. They think so much about others, about the world, about meaning, that there's simply no time left to think about whether they've turned off the tap. But, and this is an important but, none of this is a reason not to work on yourself. Because mindfulness is a skill, and it can be trained. Your uniqueness isn't a weakness. It's simply a different way of being in the world, and you can learn to use it wisely. Now, let's talk about what you can do about it. Because understanding the cause is good, but living better is even better. And here are a few specific, scientifically proven techniques that really help people with this condition. First, say your actions out loud. It sounds strange, but it works. When you say, "I'm closing the door," you engage several sensory channels at once. Movement, hearing, and speech. This creates a stronger memory trace than simply an automatic action. Yes, your neighbors might look strange, but you'll remember whether you locked the door. Second, pause. Just a second or two. Before you leave, stop. Look at the door. Consciously make sure it's closed. This pause is enough for the action to record. Third, rituals and anchors. Create consistent chains of actions. For example, I always put my keys on this shelf. When an action is tied to a specific place and ritual, the brain doesn't need to remember it. It simply knows, keys, shelf, always. Fourth, reduce information load. Fewer parallel tasks, less background noise, more moments when you do just one thing and are fully present in it. This not only improves memory, but also improves the quality of life overall. And fifth, mindfulness meditation. Just 10 minutes a day of mindfulness practice has been clinically proven to improve short-term memory and reduce stress. This isn't mysticism. It's neuroscience. So, let's summarize. If you easily forget what you just did, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with your brain. It means your brain is operating on autopilot where mindfulness is needed. It means you might be carrying too much mental load. It means you might not be fully present in your own moments. And all of this is fixable. Not overnight. But step by step, with practice and self-awareness, it's very possible. You're not absent-minded. You're not hopeless. You're simply a person with an active, busy, thinking mind who needs a little more mindfulness in everyday things. And that's completely normal. If this video resonated with you, give it a like. It only takes a second, but it lets me know you're interested in these topics. Subscribe to stay up to date with new videos, and write in the comments, how often does this happen to you? And what helps? I'd love to read every answer.